The sky above Earth was torn apart by a dark, menacing fleet of Zephyrian warships, their hulls gleaming with alien technology far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. It wasn't just the ships that were terrifying, but the sheer size of them. Towering structures, hundreds of meters long, gliding silently across the atmosphere like gods descending to Earth. Their presence filled the world with dread. Every government on the planet scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Earth's military stood no chance against the Zephyrians' advanced weaponry. From the moment the first bombardment hit, the world was plunged into chaos. Cities crumbled beneath the force of massive energy blasts. The streets erupted into flames as Zephyrian war machines, huge, spider-like behemoths, rolled through neighborhoods, laying waste to anything in their path. Governments declared a state of emergency, but there was nothing they could do. The Zephyrians had arrived with precision, as if they had been planning this invasion for decades. Earth's best fighters, its bravest soldiers, were wiped out in mere hours. In Washington, D.C., military leaders were holding an emergency summit in an underground bunker, watching in horror as their best weaponry was neutralized by a single pulse from the alien fleet. "We can't beat them," General Carter murmured, watching the giant screen showing images of cities being reduced to rubble. Not like this. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity's resolve remained unbroken. Small pockets of resistance fought back, launching guerrilla attacks, trying to do what they could to delay the inevitable. But the Zephyrians were everywhere. They didn't even need to get close to their targets. Their weaponry was so advanced, they could wipe out entire battalions from orbit without even touching down. The people of Earth were being herded, corralled like cattle, and everyone knew it. Then came the broadcast. Zoreth, the Zephyrian leader, appeared on screens around the world. His face was sharp, cold, and regal, framed by the glint of his advanced armor. "Humanity," he began, his voice resonating with an almost unnatural power, "you have proven to be an inconvenience, but you will learn your place, as others before you have. Surrender now, or face the full wrath of the Zephyrian Empire. There is nothing your primitive weapons can do to stop us." The message echoed across every broadcast channel, and for a moment, the entire world held its breath. Many feared the worst, that humanity would be wiped out, its cities turned to ash, its people enslaved or exterminated. There was no apparent escape, no way out. It was a message of dominance, of total and utter power. Yet, amid the hopelessness, something unexpected happened. In the cities and war-torn remnants of Earth, a stirring began. People who had been hiding in fear suddenly stood up. Soldiers regrouped, scientists went into overdrive, and leaders gathered whatever forces they could muster. Humanity wasn't going down quietly. Earth was a wounded animal, yes, but it wasn't dead. There was still a fight left in it. "We may not be able to defeat them today," Dr. Evelyn Carter said to her colleagues in a hidden research facility, "but we can survive. We can adapt." The thought hung in the air, a fragile thread of hope. There was no escaping the Zephyrian invasion, but Earth's survivors would make sure that no victory came easily. The fight for their world had just begun. The Zephyrians had made their presence felt across the globe. With each passing day, entire regions fell under their control, their relentless assault reducing once thriving cities into rubble. But the invaders had underestimated the spirit of humanity. Though their cities were in ruins and their leaders had fallen, Earth's survivors were far from defeated. People began to gather, forming scattered resistance groups, determined to reclaim their home, even if they didn't fully know how. In the aftermath of the initial destruction, humanity was left with nothing but the wreckage of their once great civilizations. Governments collapsed, infrastructure shattered, and supplies dwindled. But one thing remained: the alien wreckage. Crashed ships, abandoned weaponry, and broken machines now littered the planet's surface, left behind by the Zephyrians, who had taken what they needed and left the rest, as if it was of no consequence. Dr. Evelyn Carter, who had once been known for her work in advanced physics and engineering, found herself standing in the middle of a ruined city. She was surrounded by piles of what had once been Zephyrian war machines, crashed ships, burnt-out energy weapons, and broken armor. These were the things the invaders had discarded, left behind like trash when they thought humanity was finished. But Dr. Carter saw potential in the wreckage. To the Zephyrians, these were remnants of war. To her, they were the key to humanity's survival. "These may be broken," Dr. Carter murmured to herself, running her gloved hand over a scorched piece of alien metal. "But there's something here, something we can use." She wasn't the only one with this realization. As word spread about the alien wreckage, survivors and scientists all over the world began to study the remnants of the Zephyrian fleet. Across the globe, in makeshift labs, engineers began tearing apart the fallen alien technology, trying to unlock its secrets. But for every brilliant mind working on the wreckage, there were hundreds of others putting together whatever they could. A tool, a weapon, an idea. Some were successful, others not so much. But every piece of technology, no matter how damaged, seemed to hold some kind of promise. Even in their discarded forms, the Zephyrian machines were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever created. Their weapons, though impractical for Earth's atmosphere, carried a power that was simply unimaginable. However, the technology was foreign and incomprehensible, leaving many frustrated. How could humanity turn these seemingly useless scraps into something that could be used in the fight for Earth's survival? Dr. Carter wasn't deterred. Her team, made up of a handful of engineers and researchers, pored over alien schematics, figuring out what worked, what didn't, and what could be repurposed. Every failure brought them closer to success. At one point, a piece of Zephyrian power armor was connected to Earth's standard electricity grid, creating a small but brilliant energy field around it. It didn't work perfectly, but it proved something. The alien technology could be altered, adapted, and most importantly, repurposed. "We don't have time to wait for perfection," Dr. Carter said one night as she looked over a map of the wreckage zones. "We need something we can use now, even if it's not the perfect solution." And so, the race began. Across the world, from the shattered remains of the old world, humanity's brightest minds started to work together. They were scavengers now, forced to think on their feet, forced to use the wreckage of the Zephyrian invaders to craft weapons that could stand a chance against them. What had once been discarded as junk became the foundation of humanity's most powerful weapons. And as these weapons took form, so did something else: the hope of a species fighting to protect their home. The Zephyrians, oblivious to the resourcefulness growing on the planet they had left behind, continued their patrols in space, confident that Earth was now a conquered world. They had not yet realized that the very things they had discarded were about to become the instruments of their downfall. Weeks passed in the ruins of cities, but Earth's survivors refused to surrender. What began as an effort to understand the alien tech soon became a race against time. Dr. Evelyn Carter's team, now working out of a secret underground facility, had managed to make small breakthroughs, but nothing that could truly turn the tide in humanity's favor, until one day, during a routine examination of wreckage, found in a Zephyrian supply drop, something unexpected happened. Dr. Carter and her lead engineer, Marcus Sullivan, were hunched over a strange metallic device. It looked like a simple power core at first glance, cylindrical, about the size of a human torso, with multiple glowing blue symbols etched along its surface. It was a mystery, one that had puzzled everyone who'd examined it before them. The Zephyrians clearly valued it highly, as the object was encased in protective shielding that seemed nearly indestructible. But unlike most other tech they had recovered, this one felt different. "What do you think?" Marcus asked, tapping a few keys on his console, trying to force a response from the device. "I think it's more than just a power core," Dr. Carter said, narrowing her eyes as she leaned closer. "I think it's a key." As she spoke, the room was silent except for the whirring of machines and the soft hum of nearby tech. The device hummed in response to Marcus's attempt at an override, and then something extraordinary happened. The blue symbols on the core flickered, and a holographic interface blinked into existence above it. An interface completely alien, yet oddly intuitive. "It's reacting to our technology," Marcus whispered, eyes wide. The hologram displayed intricate lines and nodes of code, all interlinked by an almost organic web. "It's like it's waiting for us to understand it." For hours, they pored over the device. What started as a frustrating puzzle soon turned into a breakthrough. The device was not just a power core. It was a sort of communication tool, an interface between the Zephyrian network and whatever tech they had left behind on Earth. They had inadvertently stumbled upon a way to access and even manipulate the core's power, essentially allowing them to bypass some of the Zephyrian safety protocols. Dr. Carter felt a surge of excitement, but also caution. "This is just the beginning," she said. "If we can reverse engineer this, we might be able to use their own technology against them." For the first time since the invasion, Dr. Carter felt the spark of real hope. She understood now that the Zephyrians had underestimated humanity not just in terms of strength or technology, but in adaptability. Where the aliens saw a broken world, humans saw an opportunity to build something new. The team worked tirelessly, connecting the device to various scraps of alien tech to test its potential. Slowly but surely, the breakthrough with the power core and Zephyrian energy rifle was just the beginning. Dr. Carter and her team had only scratched the surface of the potential within the alien technology, but it was enough to ignite a fire of hope within the global resistance. Word spread like wildfire that humanity was no longer helpless in the face of the Zephyrian invaders. As scattered pockets of survivors began to unite, more and more engineers, scientists, and soldiers volunteered to contribute to the effort. It became clear that the future of Earth was no longer entirely in the hands of those who had initially fallen. The survivors, driven by desperation and resourcefulness, were now on the offensive. Dr. Carter's team worked around the clock, modifying and improving the alien tech with every passing day. It was a race against time. The Zephyrians, still unaware of the true threat humanity was quietly building, continued their patrols across the planet, secure in their assumption that Earth's resistance was fragmented and weak. They couldn't have been more wrong. The first major project was to scale the energy rifle into a more powerful weapon, something that could take down entire Zephyrian war machines. Dr. Carter realized that the power core, though highly unstable, could be used as the foundation for a much larger weapon. With her team's combined knowledge of alien and human technology, the first real test of humanity's newly crafted weaponry came sooner than expected. After weeks of preparation, the Resistance learned that a small detachment of Zephyrian soldiers had been sent to patrol a remote region that had once been home to a major military base. The aliens, thinking that humanity was broken and scattered, had become more complacent. They were too confident in their technological superiority, leaving their patrols thin and vulnerable. Dr. Carter and Commander Alex Nash, one of the Resistance's most respected military leaders, gathered their forces for an ambush. The small group of Zephyrian soldiers had been reported traveling on foot, away from their mechanized war machines and heavily armed transports. It was the perfect opportunity, an isolated target that could be hit fast, with minimal risk. The Resistance had managed to deploy several of their modified energy rifles, but the real prize was their new weapon, the energy cannon. The plan was simple: use speed and surprise to their advantage. The Resistance would hit the Zephyrians hard and fast, disabling their forces before the invaders had a chance to react. The hope was that a single victory, even a small one, would send a message. Humanity was no longer the prey. They were becoming the predators. The ambush took place in the early hours of the morning. The sky was still dark, and the cold air carried the scent of the wasteland around them. Commander Nash's team, equipped with modified armor and energy weapons, waited in the shadows, watching as the Zephyrian patrol came into view. Their figures were outlined in the dim light, marching through the rubble of a ruined city. They were confident, unaware of the trap being set for them. "Hold," Nash whispered into his comm unit, his voice barely audible. "Wait for the signal." Dr. Carter, hidden behind a nearby hill, was watching the enemy through a set of enhanced binoculars. Her heart raced as the Zephyrians drew closer. This was it, the moment that would either make or break their fight. The weapon was ready, and if the resistance had any hope of turning the tide of war, this had to be a success. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, Nash gave the signal. Now, the resistance fired first. A blast of concentrated energy from their modified rifles struck one of the Zephyrian soldiers, sending it tumbling backward in a cloud of dust. The aliens reacted instantly, raising their weapons, but the surprise was too much. Another blast from the Resistance's energy rifles hit one of the Zephyrian war machines, its armor flaring up as the weapon's powerful beam began to melt through the alien metal. The Zephyrians were disoriented and unprepared for the kind of firepower they were facing. They hadn't anticipated humans being able to match, or even exceed, their weaponry. Commander Nash's troops moved swiftly, using their newly adapted energy shields to absorb incoming fire as they pushed forward, relentlessly targeting the alien patrol's weakest points. But the real moment of awe came when the energy cannon was fired. Positioned atop a small ridge, Dr. Carter took the weapon's controls, her fingers trembling with both excitement and fear. The cannon powered up with a low hum, its energy core glowing brightly as it built to full strength. "Take cover," Nash shouted as the cannon discharged, releasing a devastating beam of blue light that tore through the air. The blast struck the heart of the enemy forces, vaporizing one of their largest armored units in an instant. The shockwave sent the remaining Zephyrians scattering, their once imposing war machines reduced to smoking debris. The battlefield was silent for a moment, save for the crackling of energy and the faint hum of the remaining weaponry. Humanity had won its first victory. The remaining Zephyrian soldiers, in shock, began to retreat, scrambling to regroup. But it was too late. The resistance pressed on, taking full advantage of their surprise attack. By the time the Zephyrians realized they were overpowered, their forces were already in disarray, retreating toward their landing zones. The humans pursued, striking with precision, preventing the aliens from regrouping. As the last of the Zephyrian soldiers fled into the distance, the resistance gathered around the wreckage. Commander Nash stood among them, breathing heavily but smiling. "This is just the beginning," he said, his voice filled with resolve. "We've shown them that we're not easy prey. Earth fights back." Dr. Carter walked up to him, her face a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "It's a small victory, but it's a message. The Zephyrians can be beaten." The resistance cheered, and for the first time since the invasion began, there was a real sense of triumph in the air. The weapons they had built, once thought to be crude adaptations, had proven effective. Humanity had fought back, not just by chance, but by using their greatest strength, their ability to innovate under pressure. The Zephyrians had underestimated humanity, and now the aliens would know that Earth would not go down without a fight. The victory against the Zephyrian patrol was a turning point, but Dr. Carter and Commander Nash knew that it was just a glimpse of what was to come. The Resistance's newfound power was exhilarating, but they had only scratched the surface of the battle ahead. The Zephyrians would not underestimate humanity again. They were bound to retaliate with overwhelming force. Days after the ambush, the Zephyrians finally made their move. Scattered across Earth, their forces began to regroup faster than expected. Their ships, hidden in orbit, had begun deploying reinforcements, larger, more aggressive war machines designed to crush the resistance with brutal efficiency. The Zephyrian leadership had taken notice of the unexpected human resilience, and they weren't going to let it fester. Dr. Carter pored over the new intelligence with her team, tracking the movements of the enemy forces. Satellite imagery showed clusters of ships descending toward key locations around the globe, large, Mobile bases, likely equipped with even more devastating weapons and armored transports. "Here they come," she said grimly, eyes scanning the map on the screen. "They're not playing games anymore. This is a full-scale counterattack." Commander Nash stood next to her, folding his arms. "We knew it wouldn't be easy. They'll hit us hard, but they're still underestimating us. They think we're still scattered, disorganized. We've got to hit them first, before they can form up." With the resistance forces more unified than ever, they began to prepare for a series of counteroffensives. They would not let the Zephyrians consolidate their forces. Instead, they'd take the fight to them, striking where the Zephyrians least expected it. Dr. Carter and her team quickly began working on improving the energy cannons, which had proven so effective during the last battle. The energy core's instability had been a concern, but they found ways to stabilize it further, allowing the cannons to fire for longer periods without overheating. The resistance now had a battery of them, ready to be deployed. More importantly, the weapons had been scaled down to make them more portable, giving the resistance greater flexibility on the battlefield. The plan was daring. The resistance would target one of the Zephyrian mobile bases, a massive fortress, heavily guarded by advanced war machines. It was the heart of the alien operations in the region, and the goal was to take it down before it could mobilize to attack other parts of the world. But it wasn't going to be easy. As the resistance prepared for their assault, Commander Nash called a meeting. The strategy would be bold: strike quickly, overwhelm the defenses, and get in and out before the Zephyrians could respond. "We know where their command center is. We take it out, and we cripple their ability to coordinate," Nash said, pointing to the map on the wall. His team was on edge, but there was a renewed sense of purpose in their eyes. The previous success had shown them that they could win, that they could stand toe-to-toe with an enemy far more advanced. But now, the stakes were higher. A single mistake could mean the end of their rebellion. "We have the weapons now," Dr. Carter added, speaking to the gathered soldiers. "We've figured out how to adapt their tech, but we need to move fast. The Zephyrians won't wait around for us to make a mistake. We need to strike when they're vulnerable." The plan was set in motion. The resistance, armed with their new weapons and bolstered by the success of their previous strike, gathered their forces for the assault. They would hit the Zephyrian mobile base in the dead of night, using speed and precision to breach its defenses before the alien forces had a chance to react. As the forces assembled, Nash couldn't help but feel the weight of the coming battle. The Zephyrians had always been ruthless, and this attack would be their way of sending a message, one that humanity could not afford to ignore. The night before the assault, as the resistance prepared, Commander Nash stood on a ridge overlooking the city. The distant lights flickered like dying stars. For a moment, it all felt like a dream that had to be fought for, with every ounce of strength and determination the resistance could muster. "We'll give them a fight they'll never forget," Nash muttered to himself, clenching his fist. For Earth. With their plan set, the resistance moved forward into the unknown, determined to strike a blow against the Zephyrians and show them that humanity would not go quietly into the night. The night of the assault was cloaked in a heavy, unnerving silence. As the resistance forces gathered in their designated strike zones, the sky was clouded over, the stars obscured by the darkened atmosphere. Earth's moon, usually a symbol of peace, now seemed like an ever-watchful eye, a reminder of everything they were fighting for. Commander Nash stood at the front of his troops, the hum of energy shields buzzing faintly as soldiers readied their weapons. Beside him, Dr. Carter checked the energy cannon one last time, ensuring that everything was stable. The prototypes were crucial for this mission, humanity's best shot at breaking the Zephyrian stronghold. "We move fast, we move smart," Nash said, his voice low and steady. "Stay focused, and stay together. Our mission is clear. We take out the command center, and we leave before they can retaliate." The Resistance's forces were split into three main groups. One would attack the base's outer defenses, Another would infiltrate the interior, and the final group, Nash's unit, would focus on the core, the Zephyrian Command Center. The base was well guarded by armored war machines, but they were beginning to rely too heavily on their strength and numbers, leaving small gaps in their perimeter that the resistance could exploit. Dr. Carter had devised a plan to use the energy cannons in coordination with a series of EMP blasts. The cannons' beams, while devastating, could be focused on specific targets, namely the larger war machines patrolling the area. At the same time, the EMPs would disable smaller, more agile drones and tech, weakening the Zephyrians' ability to respond quickly. The attack began just after midnight. Nash's unit, cloaked by the cover of darkness, moved swiftly toward the Zephyrian base. As they approached, the base's perimeter guards failed to detect them, their attention drawn elsewhere by a diversion staged by another resistance team. It was a calculated risk, but it worked, allowing Nash's group to slip past without a single shot fired. As they neared the command center, the distant sounds of explosions and firefights rang out, signals that the outer defenses were already being overwhelmed. Dr. Carter's team had launched the first wave of EMPs, temporarily shutting down several small drone patrols and causing a chain reaction of chaos within the base. The Zephyrians had no idea what hit them. Nash's group pressed forward, adrenaline surging through their veins. They moved with precision, each member of the team covering their assigned sectors. The energy rifles they carried had been fine-tuned to perfection, and they were ready for the fight of their lives. Then, as they reached the command center's entry point, a piercing alarm sounded, a shrill mechanical wail that echoed across the compound. The Zephyrians had realized they were under attack. The doors to the command center burst open with a flash of alien energy. A contingent of heavily armed Zephyrian soldiers rushed to intercept them, their weapons crackling with lethal energy. But the resistance was ready. The first shots rang out as Dr. Carter's modified rifles unleashed deadly beams, striking the Zephyrian soldiers before they could react. Nash led the charge, his energy shield glowing bright as he took cover behind a broken column. The enemy fire bounced off his shield, but the resistance's return fire was far more effective. A well-placed shot from one of the soldiers took down a massive Zephyrian war machine that had been closing in on their position. With a massive explosion, the machine crumpled to the ground, sending a cloud of smoke and debris into the air. "We're almost there," Nash shouted, pushing forward with the team. As they entered the command center, they were met with even heavier resistance. Zephyrian war leaders, protected by elite bodyguards, stood at the center of the room, frantically issuing commands through holographic communication devices. The room buzzed with a mix of alien and human technology, but the Zephyrians weren't prepared for the ferocity of the human attack. Dr. Carter was right behind Nash, firing the energy cannon with pinpoint accuracy. The weapon hummed as its blue beam cut through the thick walls of the command center, disabling the defenses and causing sparks to fly from damaged consoles. With every blast, the Zephyrian forces were pushed further back. But just as the resistance seemed to have the upper hand, a new threat emerged. The ceiling above them groaned, and large mechanical doors began to descend from the walls. From the darkness beyond, a towering figure emerged, a massive, hulking Zephyrian warlord. This was no ordinary soldier. He was covered in heavy armor, his body encased in a thick, impenetrable exosuit, with weapons built directly into his limbs. "Fall back," Nash shouted, realizing the danger. The warlord's presence on the battlefield meant they had mere moments to defeat the command center before they were overwhelmed. The warlord raised his weapon, and a beam of deadly energy fired from his arm, crashing into the ground just inches from Nash. The force sent the team scrambling for cover as they returned fire, but the Zephyrian warlord's armor absorbed their blasts without faltering. "This won't be easy," Dr. Carter said through gritted teeth, scanning the room. "We need to shut him down now." In that moment, the Resistance's true strength, its ingenuity, became clear. Nash motioned to his team to focus their fire on the warlord's back, where the plating was thinner. With precise shots, they aimed for weak points in the armor. Finally, after a few agonizing moments, the warlord stumbled, his armor shattered by a concentrated blast from Dr. Carter's cannon. The room went silent. The Zypherian forces, now leaderless and severely weakened, began to retreat. The resistance had done it. They had struck at the heart of the Zephyrian command and won. As Nash stood amidst the wreckage, surveying the devastation, he couldn't help but smile. This is the beginning of the end for them. The victory at the Zephyrian Command Center was a monumental achievement, but Commander Nash and Dr. Carter knew the war was far from over. The Zephyrians had lost a key stronghold, but they were far from broken. With their defeat, the invaders would undoubtedly call for reinforcements, larger fleets, more war machines, and even deadlier tactics. Humanity had delivered a heavy blow, but now they would face the full wrath of an alien empire desperate to regain control of Earth. Back at the Resistance's central base, the mood was a mixture of triumph and anxiety. Nash stood over a table, studying the holographic map of Earth. The planet was dotted with Zephyrian installations, some of which had already started mobilizing troops and reinforcements. Humanity's success in the previous battle had triggered an urgent shift. Earth was no longer just a target for invasion. It was now the site of a full-scale war. "We've made them angry," Dr. Carter said, pacing beside Nash. "They'll come at us with everything they have. We can't afford to wait. We need to strike first." Nash nodded grimly. "If we wait for them to regroup, it'll be too late. They'll overwhelm us. But if we attack their remaining strongholds, we might just be able to finish this once and for all." The Resistance had the momentum now. They had the advantage of surprise, and they had learned how to use the alien technology to their benefit. But their resources were still limited. The energy cannons were effective, but there weren't enough of them. The weapons would need to be deployed strategically if they were going to stand a chance against the Zypherian forces. There was also the looming question of whether they could defeat the Zypherians' reinforcements in time. Nash and Dr. Carter assembled their best strategists and engineers to discuss their next move. The key to their success lay in finding the remaining Zephyrian command centers and quickly neutralizing them before the reinforcements could arrive. "We know they're still hiding some major fleets in orbit," Dr. Carter explained. "If we don't neutralize their fleet command, they'll just keep sending ships down to Earth. We'll be fighting an endless war." The team began coordinating a multi-pronged assault, targeting key Zypherian bases in a race against time. They would send teams to sabotage the remaining command posts, disrupt communications, and disable the alien war machines. The most daring part of the plan was a direct strike on the Zypherian mothership, the heart of their military operations in orbit. If they could destroy it, the Zephyrians would be forced to retreat. But getting to the mothership would be no small feat. "We have one shot at this," Nash said, his voice heavy with determination. "We go after the mothership, we hit them hard and fast, and we don't give them time to regroup." Dr. Carter's team worked tirelessly to modify their existing weaponry for space combat. They used scraps of Zypherian tech to build makeshift spacecraft capable of taking on the mothership's defenses. The Resistance had no intention of going into this battle unprepared, and every single engineer, soldier, and strategist was working overtime to make sure the assault would be as effective as possible. As the Resistance's strike force launched into space, the weight of their mission became clear. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of their entire species. Earth had become the battleground for the survival of humankind, and it was up to them to decide the outcome. The journey to the mothership was treacherous. The Resistance's ships navigated through asteroid fields, dodged plasma blasts from Zephyrian fighter drones, and broke through the outer layers of the alien fleet. As they approached the mothership, their ships were outnumbered, and the full force of the alien military stood in their way. But the Resistance had come too far to turn back now. "All units, prepare to engage," Nash ordered. We take out their shields first, then we go for the core. We need to shut them down before they can send reinforcements. The battle in space was a blur of flashing lights, explosive impacts, and close calls. The resistance fighters pushed forward with everything they had, coordinating strikes on the mothership's weak points, using their limited firepower to disrupt the alien shields. Dr. Carter's modified energy cannons, now mounted on their ships, proved invaluable, cutting through the thick armor and creating openings for their forces to exploit. With the help of their new tech and sheer determination, the resistance fighters began to overwhelm the Zephyrian defenses. But the mothership wasn't going down without a fight. Its core weapons began to charge, and soon it unleashed a devastating barrage of plasma fire toward the resistance ships. "This is it," Nash shouted, gripping his controls. "We make our final push now." A final, concentrated blast from the energy cannons tore into the mothership's core, causing a massive explosion that ripped through the ship's internal systems. The lights flickered and the ships around them were rocked by shockwaves. For a moment, it seemed like the entire resistance fleet was on the brink of collapse. But when the smoke cleared, the mothership was no more. It was a wreck, floating in space like a dying star. The victory was decisive. The Zephyrians had lost their command center, their fleet, and their ability to coordinate reinforcements. Earth had won. But the battle was only the beginning of rebuilding what had been lost. Humanity had proven it could rise from the ashes of despair. Now, with the Zephyrians on the run, the true challenge would begin, reclaiming Earth and ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Nash looked out into the vast expanse of space, a small but hopeful smile crossing his face. "We've won, but we're just getting started. This is our world now."